Let's move on to the next case. All of the remaining cases that we're going to see do still have this pullback effect in some way, but they're not always hesitant, and it's not always obvious on the surface that this pullback effect is what's working under the surface. Our next case is politeness. First, let me say that this can work whether the situation is more formal or whether it's more informal, but it definitely is used a lot in more formal situations. And the reason why it works in general, is because number one, if you want to sound polite, you don't want to sound too direct or authoritative, like you're looking at them from a higher position. So especially if you say go to a restaurant, the waiter is actually in a lower position than you. So if they use too much of a falling tone in the wrong places, it can feel too rude, too direct. Now, it doesn't have to be a restaurant. This could just be a regular interaction between two people. That's just a easy example. Here it's useful to mention that there is another phrase under the surface in the subconscious that's directly connected to this, which is the phrase get to the point. And that means, let's not beat around the bush. That's a related phrase, the opposite of it, where we're not talking about this and this and this and this. Let's just immediately, I'm here to talk to you about this. I don't care about how your family's doing. Let me just get to the point, right? What is the purpose of me being here? The purpose of the conversation. So that falling tone, literally get to the point, the period, right? It can have that bit of a feeling like you're kind of coming from a higher place and pushing down, imposing on them. So how do we fix that? How do we avoid sounding that way in the wrong cases? Or how do we just generally make our speech sound a bit more polite? Well, that's where the rise comes in. So instead of a full fall, we do this partial fall, and then we lift off of it. We sort of pull back a little bit. What this does is this moves the emotional tone a bit higher. Okay, doesn't feel too heavy, makes it feel lighter. So indirectly, it's a little bit of a lighter emotional feeling, a bit more positive, which also gives the effect of it sounding friendlier instead of potentially sounding too direct, too serious, too authoritative. And here's a little trick. This is a key to what's happening under the surface and why this works in this case. So everything I just described about the partial fall and then the rise, that's all true. But in a sense, this is very subconscious. We don't think of it this way consciously. But in a sense, what you're doing is when you fall, partial fall before the rise, you're sort of putting yourself at a lower point, right? It's almost like you're putting yourself lower than the other person in a way, and then lifting up to sort of defer to them. So instead of just authority, boom, right? Command, firm, gravity, heavy. It's like dun dun. This isn't an objective thing. We're not literally thinking that, oh, I'm putting myself lower than this person by using this fall rise or anything. It has nothing to do with any objective status, right? It could even be your boss could use this talking to you in order to sound more polite. That's fine. So there is no objective actual status difference there, but in a subtle way, that's kind of happening under the surface. And that's part of the pullback effect. Because instead of trying to stand over and impose on them, push down on them, you're sort of backing down a bit and then lifting up to make it sound friendly. So hopefully that makes sense. Now, in addition to this, the second reason why this works is because the fall part can indirectly, subconsciously sort of have a bit of a feeling of like reservation and control, right? Because you need to compose yourself, you need to behave, a certain way. Now, this is not hesitation. Okay, reservation is not hesitation. But instead of just being like, hey, what's up? Really relaxed, reserved. Depending on the situation, you need to be more reserved, and that's that pullback effect. It's like you're pulling yourself back instead of just acting however you want to act. Again, this is indirect, under the surface, but it's working. Let's actually look at a couple examples here. How are you? How are you? And notice, there's another way to say this. How are you? R is stressed here. Okay, usually to be is not stressed, but in this sentence, that's the purpose of the sentence. I want to know your state of existence. So it's natural to stress that word in this case. But if I just stress R like would happen anyway, and then I just fall, it can feel maybe a little too direct. It can feel like kind of maybe like I don't really care all that much. It doesn't sound polite, doesn't sound nice. How are you? How are you? But what if I say, how are you? How are you? How are you? This makes it sound nicer, friendlier, more polite. Next example. Where's the restroom? Where's the restroom? So here we have a WH question, which normally falls, right? Where's the restroom? Where's the restroom? This is another reason why we might rise in a WH question. We talked about rising on WH questions before to have this sort of pass-back effect, but here it's actually just making it sound more polite, right? When we know the difference from the context. Right? Obviously, if I'm passing it back to you, it's based on something else in the context, but if I just come up to you and I say, excuse me, where's the restroom? Now notice I just said, excuse me, that's another one. So if I just say, excuse me, it can sound a little direct, a little rough, a little too heavy, okay? Like you don't really care. You're saying the words to be polite, but your tone says, eh. And this applies to the use of excuse me when you're trying to get someone's attention, like, excuse me, where's the bathroom? And it also works when you're using excuse me to apologize, like if you walk in front of somebody. Excuse me. The next case is encouragement. Encouragement. Now this is definitely something that you might think, if I'm encouraging someone, I'm trying to say, okay, do it, right? It's okay, I want you to do it, move forward. So then why does the fall rise work for encouragement? Shouldn't that just be a rise? So let's say you're talking, you're explaining something to me, and then you reach a point where you're not sure if you should talk about it, or you're not sure, you're kind of hesitant in some way. But I want to encourage you. I say, no, it's okay. Continue. Go on. Instead of go on. Say, go on. So I'm encouraging you to move forward past that hesitation and continue speaking. It's like you have the ball, you're going through the sentence, right? And then you kind of hesitate. You sort of pull back a little bit. So you're going through the sentence and then lift up, you're hesitating. And then it's like, I say, hey, no. It's okay. You can continue. You can keep moving the ball forward. So I'm encouraging you from here, go on. Let's say you've never been in the water. You don't know how to swim. But I'm going to save you if you start drowning. Okay, you're trying to learn how to swim. You're afraid. So you're looking at the water and I say, go on. My statement itself is not where the pullback is. The pullback is in the action. It's not actually in the sentence here. It's in the action in the context itself. This is where it gets a little weird and abstract. You're holding the ball. Instead of it being a sentence that, we're flowing through the sentence and you land or you pass the ball, you're holding the ball of action. Go jump into the water, get into the water, move forward with that action. Now you're hesitant, you're afraid. So you're holding the ball, you're holding back. Now what I do with my intonation, when I encourage you and I say, go on, it's like I'm putting my hand on the ball and I'm saying, hey, move forward. It's okay. I'm trying to tell you, hey, this thing, fall, this action, getting into the water, this, move forward, go on. So I'm trying to help you push that ball forward or throw that ball forward into that action. So, and that's literally what encouragement is. I'm trying to help push your action forward. So you can see how in the case of encouragement, whether it's a physical action or the flow of conversation, this seems like a very weird, completely different application that would have nothing to do with a pullback effect, but it is there under the surface. It's just much more abstract, and above the surface, we're getting a completely different effect. This is something that can very commonly happen with the prepositions, for example, and why the most common prepositions seem to have so many different meanings, because the dictionary definitions, there's many different uses, but under the surface, there's always a core feeling or idea underneath each preposition. That's what's happening here. This pullback effect is under encouragement. Now, the last case of fall rise intonation that we have, and this is another really abstract one, kind of like the encouragement one, but this one I think makes a little bit more sense. It's a little easier to see. And that would be fall rise commands. Now it could be positive or negative. It's especially used in negative commands, but it could be positive or negative. And it's not just a command. Okay, if I fall, even if I have the exclamation and then I fall a little at the end, falling on a command, obviously a command, it's an order. I'm saying this, do this. So usually we want to fall. But if we fall and then rise, that creates a special effect. So I'm still giving you the command. It doesn't feel uncertain or anything. That doesn't work in this case because it's a command. A command needs to feel firm and certain. But when we lift off on that little rise there, this gives an implied warning. An implied warning. So number one, we have the effect of that rising sort of points towards more. I'm implying that warning. Be careful. Be careful. So if I just say, be careful, that's just a regular command. Be careful. What that tells you is, oh, I need to stop, right? Think of the car. I need to stop and think, pull back, okay? Don't just jump in to do it. Be careful. I'm telling you, pull back, hesitate. Don't just rush forward into this thing because there's danger. So even though I'm just saying be careful, I'm implying there's a reason you should be careful. Now that's a very obvious, simple example. What if I say, wear your seatbelt? I could just say, wear your seatbelt. I'm just giving you a command, I'm telling you to put your seatbelt on. But if I say, wear your seatbelt, now I'm still giving you the command, but I'm also implying, hey, if you don't wear your seatbelt and we get into a car crash, you might die. So if it's a positive command, I'm trying to stop you from a bad result, probably. Right, I'm trying to stop you from something. So here I'm not telling you not to do something. This is where it kind of gets counterintuitive. A negative command is very, very simple. If I say, don't do that, right? Don't do that, don't do that. I'm saying stop, or something bad will happen. If it's a positive command, we get the same thing, but because it's a positive command, it kind of feels like it's working opposite. It's the same effect, right? I'm giving you the positive command and I'm saying, if you don't do this, wear your seatbelt is the good thing because you're safer. If you don't wear your seatbelt, you're in danger. So when I say wear your seatbelt, what I'm saying is don't not wear your seatbelt. I know that can get a little weird, but hopefully you should see how that makes sense. And so that's the pullback effect, is I'm trying to pull you back from doing something or pull you back from not doing something and implying this warning. Now there's one interesting extra thing here, which is there's an alternative way on how to use the intonation for lists. And we'll see how this can tie into the command thing in a second. But instead of just rising on a list, dogs, cats, birds, you can fall rise on a list. It's an alternative way. It doesn't really change the list itself. It doesn't change the meaning itself, but it can have a little bit of a special effect. And that is this sort of like saying this and this and. If you just rise without the fall, it kind of feels like this and, but by using a fall rise, saying dogs, cats, it makes it feel a little bit more like you're giving a little more attention to each item. The pullback effect, in this case, again, it's abstract, it's not hesitation, but you're sort of spending maybe just a little bit of extra time or giving just a little bit of extra intonational focus by falling on that item and then rising to go into the next one. Falling on the item and then rising to go into the next one, instead of just da 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 da, right? Da 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 da. And there's a special application of this that actually ties directly into the command with an implied warning idea. And that would be what we might call parent counting. And let's say, for example, you have some kids and it's bedtime. You're just telling them it's bedtime and they don't listen. They're still playing. Okay, so what do? We say, okay, you have until the count of 5 to get in bed. So you set up the situation, right? Obviously something bad is going to happen if they don't get in bed. So you start counting and you say 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Now notice I'm not just rising on the list of numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we do have the rising because of the list, but the rising also in combination with that fall gives that implied warning. Like, this is your first warning, this is your second warning. And you'll notice as you go through the numbers that it tends to get more exaggerated, because you're telling them, hey, we're getting closer to the last chance, last chance, last chance. So that again is a sort of command. The command is stop playing and get in bed, but built into the counting system. So it's a command with implied warning through counting. But this might raise a question for some of you, because I said that the falling part in politeness is sort of like, in a way, we're lowering ourselves compared to the other person. But then we see in commands and in this alternative counting that it actually is more like a use of authority or firmness on the fall part. So just like with the logic of some of the prepositions, there's many different ways that the core feeling or idea can be applied, in this case the pullback effect. And above the surface we might get seemingly opposite applications, but under the surface it's still the same core idea, just being applied in different ways.